Yeah, g'day everyone and welcome back to the TryPod Live with Winnie and Clarkey. Feels like it's been a while since I said that because I did miss our preview show, but I am back for our round 22 recap show. Look, I might have missed the preview show, but a man who is here every single week, rain, hail, sunshine, a million best bets hit, zero best bets hit, it doesn't matter. Winnie is always here. How are we going, my friend?
Clarkey's on fire. Bookies are terrified. Clarkey's on fire. Mate, I'm glad to see you're fighting fit and you've got to be feeling better after hitting another multi. So congratulations to you. It was a triple up this week after I think your multi was at $4 last week. So we can explain how each of your legs won pretty well. I had a bad week. I went 1 and 2, and that's what I deserved. I mean, I had the Roosters over on their team total, which was at least good to not play the line, which they didn't cover. But then I played the Sharks over on their team total, where they covered but didn't go over. It was a much more dull affair. And then I played Brisbane, saying they still had life, and they were blown away, and they're very well and truly dead now, mate. So I suppose we could open the show saying RIP the 2024 season of the Brisbane Broncos, and sorry, the New Zealand Warriors as well, I think, after round 22.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, although Andrew Webster would disagree. He thinks their season's still alive, which was interesting enough. Clarkey's collect a quick recap off the top, and then we'll get to it game by game. I went Cowboys head-to-head, comfortable enough, I suppose, especially with the send-off. Lofiana Khan-Pereira try, not comfortable at all. Everyone was scoring him, but the guy who leads this competition in tries, but he does get there, and under 52.5 points in the Dogs v Raiders game. So I did that one, so hopefully, we come here off a game with a win, start the show with a bang, get everyone in a good mood. And we worked last week with the Raiders as well. So that is awesome to see. We'll go to game one and kick it off, guys. We'll go through every single game and recap it. Cowboys beat the Tigers 48 points to 30. In the end, the Tigers do cover their line here of 10.5. And that's, the Cowboys do rather quite comfortably there. And, for the Tigers, I actually thought at one stage there that they were on track to cover that. In reality, I wasn't too impressed with the Cowboys' performance, and I think it's just because they are getting up towards that top 4 kind of range. They're a side now that we do expect to play finals, so the goalposts do shift a little bit higher for them than other teams. We saw the Warriors; they got away with a win against the Tigers last round. Not the case this round. So the Tigers are still a side that we can test and gauge some level of success off. But for the Cowboys, this is a game where there was 68 tries in it. The goal kicking makes it seem a bit more lopsided than that towards the Cowboys. And, of course, the Kyle Felt try in the 79th minute. But we can break that all down. We can talk about this game. The real turning point was the Justin Olam send-off. And that occurred in the 49th minute. And at that stage, well, prior to that, I should say, the Tigers still seemed that they were a chance. But really, that's the story of this match. You can't get a send-off. We talk about the Tigers' discipline and how their sin bins hurt them. Well, of course, a send-off was absolutely going to hurt them. But I do want to say, Winnie, to their credit, they did keep competing. They scored 16 points while they were down to 12 men. So I thought that was a small win for them. But modern game, cannot have a send-off and win. That's how I saw it, mate. How did you see it?
At first, it seemed like the Cowboys would win it pretty comfortably. So you're right. The Tigers sort of mounted a bit of a comeback, and then that just appeared to be dead and buried with the send-off call. I mean, was it a harsh call? First thing, when Olam puts the hit on, the ref did not blow penalty. So I'm always uneasy about a send-off for an action that was not even an obvious penalty in real time. But the player stays down, they have a look at it and go, uh-oh, the contact was shoulder to chin. And as the referee said, medium force. And it's a send-off. All right, well, game over. There's 30 minutes left. I think the margin was only about 8 points. As I said, the Tigers had clawed back into the game. So now you're thinking, well, it's a night over, 13 plus is in the bag. Cowboys are going to win this 30 plus from here. It was actually quite surprising that the Tigers put on back-to-back tries shortly after being reduced by a man and butchered another. And then you actually weren't going to win Cowboys 13 plus until Lockie Galvin threw an intercept with 90 seconds to go, shifting the ball into the hands of Felt. Whether that could be decisive in the top try scorer race. I mean, your man AKP still about 3 or 4 ahead after the weekend. Just on the Olam thing, it doesn't probably matter because the Cowboys would have most likely won anyway, but it's not consistent at all. Someone's going to have to explain this to me. So Olam makes the contact there. Later, well, the very next day, we get Manu, pretty harsh 10 in the bin, which doesn't decide who wins the game because the Roosters hang on, but does decide whether the Roosters cover the line. So it's important for punters there. The following day, Nelson makes contact high and is put on report, and there's no sin bin. So are we telling me that Nelson's contact shoulder to head was less than medium? Today, Isaac Tungo makes contact directly to Ponga's head, and if he had gotten 10 in the bin in that type of game, the Knights would have had a much greater chance at an almighty upset. So I think depending on which team you support, who you punted on, those are going to fall both ways. But it's wildly inconsistent, isn't it?
Even the referee's terminology was inconsistent. You know, this was a send-off because it was mild contact to the head. Previously, we'd always heard that was forceful, and if it was forceful, therefore it was, you know, a sin bin or a send-off infringement. But what's the gate? Who's the measurement of a medium tackle and what's a high force? Like the referee, I tell you, he didn't think it was medium force because he didn't even blow a penalty. So someone in a bunker is reviewing this tackle and he's determining that it's medium force, but he's not even at the ground. He's watching on television like all us fans, and we all, you know, disagree with it. So, man, it's just the NRL just hurts themselves with stuff like this because naturally fans are going to talk about it. They're going to question it. They're going to want consistency, and they're not delivering that. And that's probably the most unfortunate thing there.
We're not NRL 360, but I'd love to see 4-way video of those 4 incidents. Personally, I reckon they're all about a sin bin, touch and go, right? No more, no less. And I thought they were all pretty similar. So someone please explain to me why the Olam one was way worse or why the Nelson and Tungo ones were lesser. I'm not sure.
Meanwhile, the NRL will probably find a way to make it more complicated. Instead of being a medium tackle in the future, it'll be you've hit him with 6.8 out of 10 force there, so you're off. They'll find a way to make it more complicated. Let's move to game 2, mate, where the Eels shocked the Warriors over there in New Zealand, 30 points to 20. And look, I missed the preview show, so there is a chance for me to get away with a few white lies here and say that I was predicting some of the upsets in this round. But no, I'll be completely honest. I was with the Warriors for my tip here, and I thought they'd win pretty similar to how they beat the Tigers last week. Like somewhere around that double-digit line without absolutely blowing them away. But they just did not show up at all here. It's like they turned up with the attitude of, we've got bigger games coming up over in Australia. We need to save ourselves and just get past the Eels in the same way we just got past the Tigers. And that attitude problem was evident from early on. And once the Eels got on the board, they were never able to sort of get their game and now their season back on track. So officially it does seem they will miss the finals, so they do not back up their 2023 campaign. And I know this guy's got a lot of hate recently this year in Sean Johnson, but I actually think him returning really did hurt the Warriors. Their attack was lethargic, it was awkward, and it just consisted of way too many short balls. The amount of times they hit Kurt Capewell with a short ball there, I think they had Hamoli Olakuatu or Dave Fafita. It was just predictable. I think that's the best way to describe it. Very predictable attack. And dare I say it, if Tamari Martin remains the halfback in this game, I actually think that they win this game because it's not like the Eels got away with an easy game here. They were still defending their line a lot of the time. I think what shocked me the most for the Warriors, though, was their 15 errors. Not so much that number. It is higher than their season total, but it was the manner in which they'd occur. Like they'd get a brilliant kick away or field position and just knock it on first tackle for no reason at all. So it was really, really poor by the Warriors, no matter what measurement you use there. Meanwhile, for the Eels, I didn't think they were fantastic either, but they did what they needed to do. In all likelihood, this does mean they avoid the wooden spoon. So there's a small win there for them as well, mate. How did you see this one? Did you have any inkling that an upset could be coming?
Not really. I mean, Para is a team that will press a lot of offloads, which can go either way. So on a night where they stick, they can be a bit of a handful. You're absolutely right. The wooden spoon race, which was close to 50-50 going into this round, and I believe West and Para were both equal on points. It went a long way towards being decided with West losing at home and then Para pulling this upside as above $4 underdogs. And it was a weekend for underdogs, despite obviously West getting the send-off and not covering the line. 6 of the next 7 favourites, 6 of the next 7 underdogs covered the line this weekend. So 6 of 8 in total, with several outright upsets. And this is a pretty big upset. And I think you nailed it there, saying that New Zealand kind of just expected to turn up and win, which is far from how I described the way I saw this game playing out, where I thought the difference between the sides, if nothing else, is the need and the desperation and the inspiration from the home crowd. This is a team that's sold out every home game and just is not delivering for those fans. And I disagree with you that they may have won with Tamari Martin there. I agree they would have played better. But let's not forget, it was 30-6 before some late tries by New Zealand made it a little bit closer late as well. So New Zealand was blown away here. It was a surprise, but Para went over to New Zealand and gave it a real shot and played spoiler.
Yeah, and I wonder how many more upsets the Eels might have in them this year, because when I looked at their draw, I didn't see many. But the reality is now they've shown us they can shock anyone, because the Warriors is a tough road trip. So great job there by the Eels. Game 3, mate, we headed over to the West Coast, Perth, where the Roosters defeated the Dolphins 40 points to 34. So Roosters do fail to cover a 10.5 line, which a lot of people would have been predicting them to cover. And the question has to be asked, is it illegal to defend on the West Coast? Because both of these sides conceded well above their season averages, but it was a try-fest and it was still a fun game. Another example of two sides that instead of either kind of drawing a line in the sand and saying, let's dig in here with our defense and win it that way, they just wanted to play footy. It reminded me of an under-20s game here. Another fun fact about this one was 15 from 15 combined conversions. So Isako and Sam Walker had their radars working. Super fun game of footy. And I think because it was fun and because the Dolphins came close here, it's overshadowed the fact that they have lost again. Now, I'm going to be critical here on your team, Woody, because they do have all the potential to play finals. They do have a solid roster, a very strong coach. But at some point, you have to stop getting pats on the back for coming close in footy and almost winning or competing well with Penrith in Penrith example. Now, we go back to round 11, and their only wins since are the Sharks and Rabbitohs. And we're heading into round 23 next round. Now, I will be fair to the Dolphins completely. They have so many injuries, and the footy fan in me is still so proud of them and how they're able to get up and still compete against a classy side like the Roosters when they only had 17 fit players in Perth. But I guess to play devil's advocate, it is getting to a stage where we need to stop praising them for coming close, and they do have to start getting some more wins on the board to keep in touch with that top 4, 5th kind of region where they're around at the moment. Meanwhile, for the Roosters, I don't think they'll be overly happy with this win, but given the top 4 spots are still up for grabs, they will take it and move on, mate. How did you see it? Do you think I'm being too critical on your Finns?
Just clarify there, who's in the 5th region?
Dolphins, are they around the 5th, 6th mark, or have they dropped 9th? Wow, my bad. I hadn't checked the ladder before.
By virtue of the Dragons winning. So the Dolphins, and I talked about the top 8 race, the Dolphins were the most favoured of teams 8 and below to make the finals, with 1 to 7 a little bit more secure. But not anymore, obviously, with the Dolphins loss and the Dragons winning. The Dragons have jumped a win ahead of the Finns. And I looked today, Dragons are about $1.80 to make the 8 and Dolphins closer to the $3 mark. So you can see how much that loss hurts. But in addition to the surprise win by St. George, which we'll get to, you're right. The Dolphins are punching above their weight, but it doesn't count for a great deal when you keep falling short. And it is, again, a second half where the game was in the balance and the Finns fall away. It's 20-all first half. And in fact, the Dolphins scored first in the second half and led the game 26-20. But from there, the Roosters scored 20 unanswered points. So talk about covering the line. We got well ahead. We won our best bet, well ahead with the mixed matchup, although it went on to lose. I had 3 games footy where I had bets involved for the pod. And the first game and a half went great. And then the next half and full game were horrible on Saturday. But partly the reason that the Dolphins came back was the Manu sin bin. And again, I didn't like it. And I also thought that Hammer stayed down to milk the sin bin. So then if you've got direct contact to your head, hard enough that the refs are sending someone for 10, why is there no HIA? And I would ask the exact same question about the game today. Ponga got drilled in the head by Tungo. Why is that not HIA? I really can't figure it out, other than the fact that there was only about 15 to go and you don't want to send the Dolphins' best player off or the Knights' best player off to get checked. But it shouldn't matter what the score is, what the stakes are, how much time in the game is. It's meant to be an independent doctor, right? So that's another question that I'll leave people with. It gave the Dolphins a chance to cut the score to 6 and have a little throw at the stumps at the end. But ultimately, the Roosters hang on and Roosters showcase what they're able to do with the footy, just like the game last week against Manly, but also why at the moment the Roosters are not on the same level as a Penrith and a Melbourne because the defence is not there. I still think that's clearly an area that the Roosters can improve. So I wouldn't write them off. And this was my same game bet, which was an interesting one, $10 odds, and it missed out. But I had the Roosters first team to score 3 tries in the second half, which we got. Again, talking about the Dolphins falling away. And if you played Dolphins first half, you covered. If you played Dolphins against Dolphins second half, you covered, right? We get that leg. I had Roosters by 10 or more, which doesn't ultimately win. So that's the way it goes. But again, like it's backdoored, and part of the reason is the sin bin. And I had Walker to score from the 20th to 80th minute. The cruel part was Walker already had a double before the 20th minute. So if the Roosters had won by 10 or more, my multi would have lost from a guy scoring a double within 18 and then not again. So kind of would have been almost more cruel. But that's probably worth bringing up. The game of Sam Walker, he is one of the absolute form players in the comp right now, which is why the Roosters are so dangerous, because he's seeing it so well right now.
And he's honestly playing so well that even when he scored that second try, and I know you needed him, I think 3 minutes after his second one, he was playing that well that part of me still thought he could cross for a hat trick here with how the tries were flowing as well. So he was fantastic over in Perth, and have to be excited if you're a Queenslander thinking him in the Origin arena with no fear, willing to take the game on every time. Great play to watch. All right, let's kick it over to Saturday afternoon where my Titans beat the Broncos 46 points to 18. And this was absolutely unbelievable. You know, the first half kind of played out how I expected it when I broke this one down on my Titans podcast, where I thought it'd be a tight game where both sides really want it because there is a rivalry between these teams. Then we go to the second half and the Titans held the Broncos to 0 and piled on 36 points. That is just embarrassing for the Broncos by any measurement there. They were absolutely shell-shocked. They had no answer for the wave of momentum the Titans had. And to be fair to the Broncos, not everything went perfect for them. They did lose a spine member in Ezra Mam and, of course, Payne Haas during this game. But you still cannot be conceding 36 points, even if you lose. Even if you lost Kalen Ponga and Nathan Cleary from the same team, you shouldn't be conceding 36 and a half of footy there. Now, 9 tries for the Titans. It was a try-fest. We only needed 1 for Clarkey's collect. As I touched on earlier, he leads this competition, but boy, he made us wait, and he made me nervous. But in the end, Loffy does get over for that try for our second leg, which kept us alive there. This game showed me 2 things, Winnie. Number 1, the Titans are an improving football side. Where the Bulldogs were at a few rounds ago, where we were like, okay, they're piecing together all these small improvements, the Titans are starting to do that now, and they have done it sporadically throughout the year, but it could be a little bit too late, which is why I'll say it again. I'm going to predict us to play finals next year. I did this year, and everyone, laughed, and that looks like they'll be proven right, but that's okay. Second, there is something very wrong with the Broncos. Very wrong, because the talk coming into this game was that they've done a lot of soul searching. They know what they've got in the dressing shed, and they've put it all into practice, and they're ready to get it out there on the field. And, well, they didn't get much out on the field at all. Only other takeaway I had from this one, Winnie, was the Titans' ability to adjust to Reece Walsh. In the game earlier this year at Suncorp, Reece Walsh started off very dominantly, and he was sweeping on that left edge and causing carnage. And he started this game fantastic as well. But the Titans in both games, to their credit, really adjusted and shut down Reece Walsh, who is one of the more dangerous players in this competition. So brilliant performance by the Titans. Statistically, season is still alive. But for Broncos, it is season over, in my opinion, mate. How did you see this one, though?
You can't write the Gold Coast off completely this year either, just the form that they're in. And you just go back to the fact that the Titans lost their first 6 games and lost their most important, most influential player and captain in the second game, or in their second game, and lost some tight ones. And here they are still in the top 8 race. And it's not likely, but fair few others above them all lost this week, like Newcastle, Brisbane, New Zealand. right? So it's still within your own hands. You control your destiny. Now, I'm going to defend the Broncos a little bit here, not just because I had a best bet. I took Brisbane over 27.5. And you can say I got the high scoring part right and playing it at Seabus on an afternoon. But for the second week in a row, I've played Brisbane overs. And for the second week in a row, I've been killed by totally anemic second half. Brisbane leads this game 12-0 as well as 18-10. So depending on how you want to spin it, they outscored 46-8 the rest of the way, or 36-0 from halftime. I mean, Adam Reynolds misses a conversion from mid-front first half. You could tell something wasn't quite right. Even the fact that Walsh scored 2 brilliant individual tries, and I got this sense all game, it was as if he felt the team needed him. Like, Walsh felt that he had to put the team on his back, and it actually did pay off with a couple of amazing tries, but he was trying so hard because there was less and less being created around him. And part of that is Ezra Mann does this. I think it was ankle or knee first half. You mentioned Haas injured. In fact, Haas was injured in the warm-up, which is pretty rough to lose someone innocuously, like such an important player. So I want to try and bring some comments in. Ryan says as soon as he heard that Haas had a Liz Frank injury, he went Cowboys 180 at $1.82 against Brisbane next week, and that's in North Queensland. And I just checked, it's like $1.50 now, but that's also on the back of the Brisbane loss. Harry Potter says going from being in the grand final to not making the finals is astronomical. And you go further than that, it's 26-8 in the grand final. Is that the right score?
I can't remember, but they were
24-8, pretty sure it was. You roughly. And you got one hand on the trophy, just about two hands. And you're right, like Penrith has killed Brisbane. Brisbane actually, now you can look back and say they never recovered. In this game, it was a little bit closer than the final score. Walsh, yes, he was contained a bit more second half, but he was still trying his best. Threw a beautiful pass to Oates. Any winger in the comp, I think, scores that. Oates, one of the slowest wingers in the comp at this point in his career, couldn't get to the line, so it's not a try. Walsh, he throws another gem of a pass to Dean Mariner, through a hole, grounds the ball, and it would have been a 2-point game. But somehow Mariner, guy who has 15 tries this year, has terrible hands, can't ground it. You know, these missed opportunities, I could have maybe still won my best bet, even being on the wrong side. Anyway, a couple of minutes after Mariner doesn't ground it, the Titans are scoring a 50-meter try through your man, AKP, off the scrum. And what a swing in the top try scorer race that could have been as well. There were 3 tries between those two players. Mariner's got a grounding to make it 2, stuffs it up. Titans go the other way. Now there's a 4-try lead for AKP if anyone's on him for top try scorer. And you had a great weekend if you are, because Dom Young didn't score for a Roosters team that put up 40 and had a hamstring strain as well. So that's aside the top try scorer race, but that was the turning point in the game where it slipped away from Brisbane. And once Brisbane realised the game was lost, they had been fighting as hard as they could, and they'd been making up for pain not being there. And Walsh had gone into 5'8". Who went back to fullback? Did they throw Jesse? I think they threw Jesse Arthurs back to fullback because they had Karapani come off the bench. And once Brisbane realised it was gone, then they just folded up. So people had written off Brisbane going into this game, and look, fair play to you because they got destroyed. But I reckon if Brisbane hadn't lost such important players and maybe execute a couple of moments, they could have taken that game right to the wire and potentially could have won. But it sums up Brisbane's season, that inability to make it count and falling away extremely erroneously.
Yeah, the Broncos are going to be the side to watch in 2025 to see how they respond to this disastrous campaign for them after what was such a strong 2023. Game 5, mate, was also a major upset. In Amy Park, the Dragons beat the Storm 18 points to 16. It's the first time they've beat the Storm in Melbourne in any venue since 1999. And I don't think too many of us saw this result coming, but I think it does show that with a salary cap in a competition as close as the NRL, if you get complacent, any side can beat you on your day. The Storm's last loss prior to this was back in round 12, And it did remind me of the Storm earlier this year, where they're playing so poorly, but just in the last 5 or 10 minutes, they just find a way to win. Although this time they weren't able to find that way to win, despite the Dragons presenting opportunities. Most notably the Hame Sele offload attempt with 2 minutes to go, up by 2 in your own end. Crazy. But reality for the Storm is it's not that bad of a loss. Look, there's one conversion difference between these two sides, right? It just comes down to we have such high expectations of the Melbourne Storm because they're at home, because they're in first, and because they had a huge winning streak. But for whatever reason, on this night, it didn't click. It didn't work out for them. But I tell you what, I would hate to be the Bunnies next round. The Storm are going to come with a vengeance, I believe. I expect a huge response from them, a huge turnaround based on what Craig Bellamy will be saying throughout the week. For the Dragons, they actually don't rise too much in my books. Now, that could be slightly controversial because this is a huge upset win, but I've still got them in that bunch of teams that'll be fighting for the 8 or just miss the 8. Them beating the Melbourne Storm on a night where the Storm was so far off it wasn't funny doesn't make them rise too much in my books because I still know if the Storm are at their best, I still believe they beat the Dragons quite convincingly like the Panthers did last round. But regardless, to go back to that game for the Dragons, this is a great win because it's a huge confidence booster. And it's also a great way to kind of make everyone forget and just leave that really bad loss last round in the past. So that is a great work there by the Dragons getting the job done and breaking their hoodoo in Melbourne, mate. How did you see this one?
Yeah, pivotal one, as Ryan says, Dragons help Penrith. So it swings the minor premiership race where the Storm were very warm favourites with a 4-point lead over Penrith and getting this win that no one really expected. But Storm goes in $1.10 at home. Now the Storm are outsiders for the minor premiership. The reason being that they have to play Penrith in a couple of weeks in Penrith in a game that most likely decides the minor prem. And clearly the Panthers will be favourites at home. So Penrith took care of business today, 2 points behind Melbourne, but that game very likely to swing it. And I can't see any other games Penrith is likely to lose. Well, they're never likely to lose, but it looks to me like Penrith will run the gauntlet as opposed to Melbourne, probably favourite in every game, but have a trip up to North Queensland, a more losable game. And whether Melbourne pushes hard for the minor prem or feels a real opportunity to make a grand final and rest players, even if it means being satisfied with second, kind of like we saw Brisbane do last week. Everyone is so afraid and respects Penrith so much that people will actually not sabotage, but make decisions that are suboptimal for the regular season just to give themselves every possible chance in the final. So the minor prem race swung and the top 8 race as well, because I came into this game after watching Brisbane and their demise earlier in the afternoon and watching the Warriors where I was shocked that they would lose that game to Para, thinking to myself, well, the Dolphins lost and I'm a Dolphins fan, but I'm very worried that somebody is going to overtake the Finns and the Finns are running out of fuel fast. But who is going to come and grab this spot? Like, who is the 8th best team this season? And then watching this game, and it was a great game, competitive game. And as I watched the Dragons build that lead and cling on and win a really tough one in the toughest of environments, it said that makes sense. Like, the Dragons are probably the team that comes in and gets there. And also, you deserve it to come and win a game like this. I agree with you. I was definitely having memories of the Storm are down 2 tries against the Warriors, but they're not dead yet. They come back and win. And the Storm were down a try late against the Bulldogs earlier this year at home, but they just find a way to win these ones. And the Dragons were down 6-0, but built the lead to 18-6 before Melbourne came back and had a chance to pinch it. The Dragons just showed so much more effort compared to a week ago where they were utterly destroyed at home in the Gong against Penrith. Whether you're going to draw any comparisons between what Penrith did to the Dragons versus the Storm, I just think it's a different day and a totally different Dragons team. I'm a little bit disappointed myself because we try and use the recap to figure out where we could have done better with betting. I said that I felt similar way about 3 games this weekend. The Storm at home to the Dragons is a big favourite. The Panthers at home to the Knights is a big favourite. And the Bulldogs at home to the Raiders as a reasonable favourite. And that all those lines seemed a little bit inflated, but I just didn't want to get in front of these hot form teams at home. So at some point, those are the bets that nobody wants to make. Nobody wants to take the points with the Dragons against this ruthless and fast Melbourne team. No one wants to get out in front of Penrith in Penrith, and no one really wants to bet against the Bulldogs after what they've done recently, especially playing at a sold-out Belmore. But all of those teams covered the lines. All of those underdogs made great games of it. The Dragons were the ones that actually got the outright victory. You could see what it meant to Flano in the coach's box. Lomax, again, probably one of the standouts. Hunt always is. Melbourne, I didn't think Melbourne played that bad. A little bit off with their execution at times, and they'll be disappointed to give up 18 straight to anybody. But the Dragons just grew with belief as the game went on, as the minutes ticked over, and once the Dragons found the front, that they had an opportunity. And you've got to give a lot of credit to the toughness of St. George, because they don't have the star power that Melbourne has on the other side of things. Munster's back now. You've got to deal with Grant, Tues, Pappy, but the Dragons did.
And to the Dragons' credit, they would be the only side in quite a number of years, I'd imagine, that have beaten the Storm at home and the Panthers at home in the same regular season, right? I know they call Panthers during a COVID time, but not COVID time, Origin time rather. But of course, they were also missing Ben Hunt in that one, so they had their own excuses. Let's move on to the next game, mate. The Sharks beat the Rabbitohs 20 points to 6, and for me, this is probably the most unconvincing 13-plus win I've ever seen. It was a relatively poor showing by the Sharks and an even worse one by the Rabbitohs. And I was trying to come up with some notes for this game winning. I was like, really, what do I take from this game? Because we knew the Sharks were slightly better. We knew they were at home. We knew the Rabbitohs had injuries. What do I take from this game? Well, I go to the Rabbitohs. Look, they had a huge injury toll. They've got an interim coach. It's season over. They didn't turn up. So what? It's somewhat to be expected. But then with the Sharkies here, this is still a top 4 side, and they're at home. And I think we'll see next week what the Storm will do to the Bunnies to really sink in how poor this was by the Sharks. And you go back all the way to Magic Round, mate. The Sharkies beat the Roosters there. From that point, they've only beaten the Broncos and the Broncos, Tigers, and Eels, I think it is. So there's 3 wins in that time there by the Sharks, and this is a top 4 side.
The Sharks beat the Eels?
No, they lost to the Eels. Yeah, they lost to the Eels because most characters. So it's only Broncos and Tigers. So that's, we're going back to Magic Round, mate. And we're only picking out 2 wins from Magic Round and now for the Sharks. This is a spot where I actually did expect them to do a little bit better. They're at home, a sold-out crowd, another week with the halves combination of Atkinson and Trindle together. And I just hope that this isn't another season where the Sharkies start super strong and then slowly fade away to nothing come finals time. Because it has been a while since they've won a finals game, and they have been there for the past, I want to say, 4 years. So something does need to change for the Sharks. They might be without Braden Trindle, and they might be coming up against the Titans without him, where obviously that would be horrible because the Titans have already beaten them away this year. This time they're at Titans home. For the Bunnies, too many errors in their game, but it's that time of the year where, as I said, they're out of finals contention. They're down on troops. They've probably got one eye looking ahead to the season. So nothing too significant to take from this game for me, Winnie, other than the Sharks do need to continue improving, which in my opinion is something we shouldn't be saying about a top 4 side in round 22. So I do have a few concerns on the Sharkies, mate. How did you see this one?
Yeah, really disappointing watch for me because I get Brisbane scoring no points in the second half, and the mixed matchup was Roosters, Brisbane Sharks combined for 90. And we get 40 out of the gate with the Roosters. Then we get 18 first half by the Broncos, but then none second half. And so we needed 32 by the Sharks to win the mixed matchup with 2:30. And we needed 30 from the Sharks to win the best bet because I played Sharks over 29.5. When I played that on Tuesday, I didn't know the information that Cody Walker would be scratched. The minute I heard that, I said, I'd much rather just be laying the points with Cronulla. It changes the style of game a little bit when now you're not as likely to get a high-scoring game because it just reduces the ability of South's attack so much. And that ended up being the case. The closest South ever came to scoring in this game was just when Jai Gray got his hands on the ball. He scored the opening try, and he nearly probably took it the distance 2 or 3 other times off kick returns. And outside of that, South's never looked like scoring. So I don't think Cronulla played very well because there were definitely opportunities and territory for Souths, and a better side would have pr- produced some points and applied more scoreboard pressure. But South's ineptitude in attack just meant that Cronulla could cruise, really. It was only 6-6 at half time, but the Sharkies were a bit better second half, took a couple of chances. Trindle had a great game before having to succumb to that hamstring strain. They say it was precautionary. It didn't look great. So you're talking about Hines won't be back for the rest of the regular season. Another combination with Atkinson and Trindle, but that's probably not the combo next week. Sharkies won't mind winning ugly, but it was far from convincing, that's for sure.
I tell you what, Winnie, I had a look while you were speaking there. The Titans at this stage are underdogs against the Sharks. I don't expect Braden Trindle to play, just because if you are the Sharks and it's 50-50 on a hamstring and you know you don't have Nico Hines to around 27, you can't risk him. You got to take the conservative approach there. That means it'll be a halves combo of Daniel Atkinson and it will be Cameron McInnes next to him. Titans are at home. They played very well at home in their last two against the Warriors and Broncos, mind you. It is a Friday night, which probably does suit the Sharks more. I hope that line doesn't move too far because that is something I'll have my eye on very closely for Clarkey's collect next week.
When you say an underdog, it's nearly pick 'em though.
It is,
yes. Very
plus
narrow underdog. And these sides met at Coffs a month ago, and it was an 8.5. I think the game closed 8.5. Maybe I think we played Sharks the best bet 7.5.
7.5.
On a neutral 7 or an 8-point line. Adjustment now. Hines out, potentially Trindle out. Titans the same. Just a super rapid fire question for you: if AJ Brimson's available next week, where does he play?
Oh, he has to come off the bench. Unfortunately, you can't. You can't discredit what Keanu Kinney's done. Genuinely, he could be the Kiwis fullback at the moment, and he wouldn't look out of place. That's how good he's been. So
still, Brimo could be an outstanding utility.
Yeah,
and make you even more dangerous in that game. Not that we'll get ahead of ourselves and preview that one any further, but it's if the Titans season is going to remain alive, that's obviously one that has to be won and is winnable. And you're catching Cronulla not playing their best and not full strength. As for the Sharks, they're clinging on to fourth place, and there's other teams like sides that have beaten them recently, Canterbury, North Queensland nipping at their heels.
Yep. No, it's going to be that's a great game. We don't want to get too far into it. We will save that for the preview show there. Let's move to the Sunday games, mate. We've got 2 games left to recap for you guys. Panthers beat the Knights today at home, 22 points to 14. And, you know, it was a strange round of footy. I know a lot of my friends and speaking with people online didn't do too well on the punt this weekend because of all these strange results. Well, this is a really strange one for me. I thought the Knights were done here. So I turned on the television, and the first thing I saw was Jacob Saifidi had done his calf in the warm-up, and their backup player had already played New South Wales Cup earlier that day, Thomas Cant. So I just thought, wow, it's just going to be a whole world of pain here for the Knights. And they actually had some really strong qualities about their performance. They really did. Unfortunately for them, I thought it was 2 things. One, a lack of class in their halves particularly. I don't think Phoenix Crossan is a 7, and Tyson Gamble does need a strong 7 next to him, and falling short in the big moments. You know, there was a moment where Isaiah Iongi, who was on debut, was caught in the ruck, and Tyson Gamble either had to pass it out to the left or get a nice kick through. He kicked it dead, and it wasn't even close to being a good kick. That signaled the start of the end there for the Knights. They lost all the momentum. Whereas you go to the Panthers, and when the big moment comes calling, who steps up again? You know, when in his first game back, it was the 2-point field goal. Last week, it was a 3-try system, 2 tries. This week, Nathan Cleary, just like he did in the grand final, and similar, just to the other side and off his opposite foot this time, which makes it just as more impressive. Nathan Cleary, he steps up. Again, I just go back to what is Adam O'Brien thinking as a coach? Because the amount of times I've gone against the Knights this year, and my key reason has been it's another chop and change in the spine. Well, he's gone and done it again, and we're in round 22. Like, if you just can't be in round 22 and not know who your strongest 17 is. You just can't. You know, you had 22 weeks to figure it out to this point. And I think because there was that lack of cohesion between the halves who'd never played together, it actually turned them into a really conservative approach in their attack, but especially their fifth tackle options. There was no thought to let's put up the bomb and test the rookie here at fullback. It was always let's do a nice simple kick to Brian To'o and make them come out of their own end. And the Knights did really well for 75 minutes. But I do believe if you want to beat the Penrith Panthers at home, you cannot play conservative football and hope to win by that approach. You must throw the football around, you must take some risks, and you must use the ball. And the Knights, unfortunately, just didn't do that, but their bravery and defense made up for it, and they were in this game for a long time. So still credit to the Knights, but I do think they could have executed a little bit better and probably even won this game. So I don't be too critical of them in that sense, mate, because it's always hard to beat Penrith at home. We know that for sure. What about yourself, mate? How did you see this one?
I think you summed it up well there. An underdog. I love a team that plays with an underdog mentality, understanding you're going to have to mix it up a little bit, add some variance to a game, because if you both play your standard level, the other side is superior. But you can't fault Newcastle too much, playing super conservative, but not hurting themselves either, and finding themselves in this match at 14-all. So Newcastle did defend very well. Newcastle, on the occasion where they looked to create something and a line break that would usually be off the back of some brilliance of Ponga, Penrith, as you expect, was able to scramble and cover for the most part. If Tungo gets sin binned, and just to explain for those who didn't see it, there's about 15 or 20 minutes to go, and the Panthers are up 2, and it's a backline shift by the Knights, and Ponga, quick catch and pass. Tungo comes into jam. The ball goes to ground. To'o picks it up and scores. It's awarded a try. It's nearly game over, as much as game over would be with a Penrith 8-point left, but it goes from still at anybody's game at a 2-point margin to an 8-point, probably Penrith secures it. But the bunker intervenes and says the contact by Tungo was high. When you do see the replay from a certain angle, it's pretty flush into the chin. I can't see how it's any different to the Manu or the Olam ones, as I spoke about before. Newcastle gets the penalty. On the back of that, gets another penalty, levels the score. So it swung the game and kept the Knights in it. But Newcastle fans will say, but why was Tungo allowed to stay on the field? Newcastle then gives away a penalty, and you said it. It was similar to the grand final. And this is just crazy, because what did I say on Tuesday? That Clarkey is the best player that's ever played the game. And everybody knows how good he is. But in the grand final, when Penrith was down 4 points, he scored a try catching it at first receiver against Brisbane, against the second best team of the whole year, defending for a premiership. Clarkey just caught it first receiver and beat Brisbane defenders and scored the try to win the grand final. And today it's 14-all. And Clarkey, it's what I'm getting at is it's not even like a try popping up in the right position, backing up, somebody else does the work and he finishes it off. He's scoring individual tries, and he's the player that all eyes are on, and he beat 4 tacklers to do it. And Penrith got a penalty very late just to secure the win, but the win was secured by that man, and he never misses goal kicks. And all credit to Newcastle going into such a tough environment and fighting very hard, just like the Dragons did, without a little bit of the polish. But what more can you say about Nathan Clarkey, what he's able to do, and how he's able to break teams' hearts week in, week out?
Yeah, no, he's an absolute freak, and it's a pleasure to watch him. Just the way he passes the ball, the way he moves, he's just such a fantastic athlete. And you did ask a very great question, maybe 3 or 4 recap shows ago now, when Nathan Clarkey was still out. You said, who is the best player in the world right now? Obviously you'd say Nathan Clarkey, and at the time you offered up Stephen Crichton, and I'll get to that in a second. But the Bulldogs beat the Raiders 22 points to 18, and it was a frantic first half where both sides, we expected them to have high intensity. I say we expected as if I was here on the preview show. You guys would have seen my short clip I sent in. Basically, my key takeaway was both these sides are desperate, but they don't really seem like the sides that will be desperate and attack better. They seem desperate and they'll defend better. And I'll be honest, I didn't even see that high of a score coming. I thought it'd be like 12 to 14, 12 to 16. So I got a little bit nervous at times. But the way the Bulldogs shifted the ball left and right, it reminded me a lot of the Broncos game, which was the first time we've seen them do it. So I do wonder if that's going to be a part of their game plan moving forward. And as a footy fan, I hope it is, because it's really fun to watch. and they shift it so well. The only team that does it similar is Penrith, who has the next most Penrith players than Penrith. Well, it's the Bulldogs. But it was a bit of a strange second half for me to watch, Winnie, because I've never really had to cheer a football game where I want both teams to play bad. I didn't want points. It was as simple as that. So it was a really, really weird one. I thought there was positives for both sides. The obvious takeaway for me for the Bulldogs is defending their home record. They are still undefeated at home this year, and we're in round 23 next round. So that is absolutely awesome. The negative I've got for Canberra here, and probably the only negative from their game, was the change of spine with no Ethan Strange. I'm interested to hear the press conference once we wrap up here and hear Ricky Stewart explain why that change was made. Now, onto the point that I wanted to touch on earlier regarding when you asked who was the best player, roughly, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks ago. At the time, you did say, could Stephen Crichton be an option? And I remember I sat and I thought, probably not. He's a centre, doesn't influence the game as much as a spine player, but he was the difference between these two sides. We had two desperate sides, one playing in front of a full, sold-out spiritual home venue, and the other playing for their player in his 300th NRL game. And the difference between 17 players that took the field and gave it their all was Stephen Crichton. And then it got me thinking, would Reece Walsh, Kalen Ponga, Daly Cherry Evans, would any of these players have the same impact on the Bulldogs this year as what Stephen Crichton has had? And I'm not certain. I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just not certain, mate. So great win by the Doggies. Great game by Stephen Crichton. How did you see it, and what do you think about my comments there on Critter?
Yeah, he is going as well as anyone in the world. You've got to say the season Jerome Hughes has had, although tasted defeat yesterday. Dylan Edwards currently injured, but when he wasn't, we saw what he did in the Origin Arena games when Penrith was missing Cleary. And if you were to put Jerome Hughes or Dylan Edwards in their prime on this Bulldogs team, they'd be having a great year as well. But you're right. In a game that was low scoring and you called it perfectly, we've got multiple Ryan's comments. So I know it sounds like I'm always throwing to comments from Ryan, but Ryan Whitaker talking about being on unders in a Dogs game. Last week was the anomaly, and that was really just because Brisbane couldn't defend. Once again, you're cashing on unders. Both teams came to play defensively, but Critter scores the first try, which is more or less an individual try, just getting early ball and carrying defenders to the try line. Scores the second try for the Dogs, which is even crazier, getting the ball on a short side off fifth tackle, nothing's on, and a little left foot chip in behind, kind of not a chip, it didn't go over the defenders, but between defenders and beats them and to the ball, and it sits up for him for a second individual try. And then the clincher is a Crichton assist to Addo Carr, who has recently returned, and that's off a scrum play that put the Dogs in front, though the Raiders did score after that, so still had a chance. We're knocking on the door in the last few minutes. I mean, that's Stephen Crichton's fingerprints all over 3 of the 4 tries. And the other one is Cherry, beautiful moment as well for a long-range try, also finished by Addo Carr. So it's like the Bulldogs came up with 4 tries, and the halves and the hooker didn't even have to do anything. So these are outside backs for the Dogs are a true strength. And it's an awesome combination, a team that can defend so gritty. It is so hard to score on, but has these players that can produce moments of brilliance is what makes the Bulldogs so dangerous. Can they upset someone that's higher than them on the ladder? Can they upset a Roosters, a Storm, a Panthers? I don't know if they necessarily can, but they're playing well enough, Canterbury, that it'd be wrong to write them off. And most importantly, to get this win today, while it was rough for the Raiders because the Raiders could have made a major step towards the finals, it was equally important for Canterbury who still have their sights set on top 4, and it's still in their reach.
100%, man. This was a great game to close out a round that had some unpredictability. And I think as punters, not all of us, but some of us, it humbled us a little bit where, just when you start thinking that you're seeing the NRL and you know how it's all playing out, this sport just goes and throws up some crazy results that none of us saw coming and some awesome games like this. And that's why we all love the sport so much, guys. that will go ahead and do our recap show, guys. We will see you next Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. to preview everything round 23. From myself, thank you very much. And over to you, Winnie, for the final word.
We do love this sport, even though I had a rough week. And I got what I deserved, as I said before, 1 and 2. But we also, I think a lot of us just love sport in general. So we've been enjoying the Olympics. We'll let you guys get back to it now. The TryPod medal multi is looking in an outstanding position. I'm willing to call it. The USA leg is going to cash. So many silver medals. It doesn't matter because I played USA under 40.5 gold, and it's been beautiful the amount of times we've watched USA denied gold, including this morning in the women's 100-meter sprint, where I have remained 100% on my Olympics tips. If you're in the TryPod group, you are seeing these tips. I had Molly O'Callaghan in swimming last week, and I said, it's one thing to get plus money odds on Molly, but she was 215. But let's go even bigger. I'm going $6 on Alfred in the women's 100, who did it easily and beat Sha'Carri Richardson twice in a row in the semi and the final, and it wasn't close. So that was a beauty to get up this morning. Australia continues the gold rush, so they're looking a strong position for the medal index. We just need to keep cheering along China. That would bring home a $13 odds multi that I know a lot of our followers are riding with me. So I hope you're all enjoying that and all of the action. It's a smorgasbord of sport. I got to say, it's pretty awesome to hop on the 9Now app and pick any sport and jump in and out. I've watched all sorts of weird and wonderful sports the last few days, but with the athletics starting as well. And the men's 100 tonight, I like is it Kishane Thompson from Jamaica, but he's looked so good in the heat that he's into $1.50, was plus odds before. We'll see how the semifinals shape up, but I've enjoyed all of it, So I've been sharing when I've seen anything I really like in the group, and I will continue to do that. So if you're not in our Facebook group, you know where to be. Enjoy the action for the next week, guys. We'll see Tuesday, as Clarkey said. I'm going to try and bounce back. Clarkey's scorching hot with his multi this week. Clarkey's collected last week as well. So I could not be more pleased to see with the ability of Clarkey and the results he's being able to produce. And it's just additional pressure on me and motivation to raise my game to your level, mate. So let's all have a good week, and we'll see you back here Tuesday to talk about round 23.